Hello everybody, Joe Bag of Donuts here. Welcome back for another episode of Mihoyo. A little late on recording this on my part. That's an oopsie for me. I expected this video to go up like, maybe an hour and a half after like my normal upload time. Because the other day, I'd stayed up all night. Well, all day for me because I normally sleep during the day. Just playing shitty RPG Maker games. And I'm like, it's currently, God, what was it? It's like 10 o'clock at night after I've already been up for like 24 hours. I'm like, I'll sleep for like 5 hours. I'll sleep till like 5 in the morning. Wait, that means I went to bed at like midnight. Ugh, I was up later than I thought. But anyway, I'm like, I'll sleep for 5 hours, wake up, record a video, then upload it, go back to bed, whatever. I set my alarm for 5 a.m., woke up at 5 a.m., said, like another hour or so, and just rolled back over. And then I woke up, and it was 5 p.m. Oops. Just slept away an extra 12 hours, which, I mean, I feel okay. My throat's a little dry from having my heater on the entire time. There's like no moisture left in my body whatsoever. But, I have been complaining like every single recording session for like the past 2 weeks. I'm like, man, I'm so fucking tired. I guess it was. Really tired. But what can you do with it? A little late is better than ever. But I have to work tonight, which means I have to get this done. Fortunately, today is one of my short work days, only 8 hours instead of the 12. So even I can come back from work and record another episode if I feel so inclined for either Umineko or another episode of Mihoyo, depending on if I record an episode of Umineko after this, which don't forget to go watch all my Umineko videos. Thanks guys, thanks. But anyway, where did we leave off last time? Toko came, got a house visit from Big Sis. Mildly threatening. She exploded her glasses and just left fucking glass dust and shards all over the cushions. That's gonna be great when fucking summer rolls around and you're sitting down in shorts and you get stabbed in the thigh. But maybe she magically cleaned it up. Who knows? I highly doubt it. Doesn't seem to be in her character. I've seen her fucking office. Anyway, let's continue reading. The curtain of night had already fallen. Not even an hour had passed since Toko left the estate, and Sojiro was feeling the distance between him and the girls. Is the text moving a little slow? No, okay. I was looking at my other monitor, and I'm like, weird, it looks kind of choppy, but, guess it's fine. Alko and Alice felt much the same way about Toko Aozaki, who seemed more elusive than a phantom.
とにかく、姉貴が敵だってことは宗十郎にも分かったでしょ？ならつべこべ言わず、君子危うきに近寄らずよ。まあ、姉貴もあんたと会って、私たちとは全くの無関係だって分かっただろうから、そっちには手を出してこないでしょうけど。
Alko seemed absolutely certain in her assessment, as if to proclaim that Sojiro had dodged a bullet. Strangely, she was placing her trust in her enemy's sense of reason.
そうかな。そうなのかな。そうだといいんだけどな。
そうだから安心なさい。昔からいらないものには手を出さないんだから、あの人は。
そっか。青崎がそこまで言うなら安心する。あ、いらないものって言えば、トウコさんが青崎のティーカップをもらうって。
Oh, that's really gonna get her
セーブルのやつ。
ちょっと待って。
Just sibling things.
あんた、それを黙って見てたっていうの？
そうだけど。やっぱりあれは奪っていったのか。
It's like, what do you expect them to do? It's like the fucking greeters at Walmart. They're told not to try to stop anybody when they steal. That's just a good way to get shot. Sojiro nodded sagely, while Alko... I'm fine. While Alko fumed. She wondered where his serious manner and tone had gone. Sojiro's frustrating absent-mindedness had returned.
しかもセーブルのカップって私の一番のお気に入り。
Alko's fist trembled violently, but as much as she wanted to, she knew better than to plant it on Sojiro's carefree face. Not that he was even capable, but even if Sojiro did try to stop Toko, it would have gone tragically for him. It would have gone the way of the dodo.
そういえばあの人、
Or I guess
よく私の持ち
passenger
物
pigeon is
を奪
more,
っていったっけ？
whatchamacallit, the word, thematic for this VN.
他人のものを欲しがる癖、まだ治ってないんだ。
子供の頃はみんなそうなんじゃないのか？
Yeah, except she's a grown woman. He wondered aloud, curiously.
そうかな。私のクレヨンとか人形とか取っても仕方ないと思うけど、どうせ粉々にしちゃうんだし。
Sojiro felt his heart jump into his mouth. The ominous foreshadowing was not lost on him.
それはどういう？
だから、あの人って私の持ち物を横取りしてはぶっ壊すのが趣味なのよ。苦節14年、姉貴に目をつけられて無事だったものなんて一つもないもの。
Listening to Aoko, Sojiro recalled his conversation with Toko. He hoped he was imagining it, but he vaguely recalled her declaring Sojiro Suzuki as someone's property.
それはちょ
Yeah.
っと難儀だな。
Sojiro's face turned grim, not unlike a detective at the scene of a crime. A scene which left no traces of evidence or clues as to how the case could be solved.
でしょ？ひどい姉貴なのよ、あの人って。
All sisters are. Unaware of Sojiro's turmoil, Aoko calmly sipped her tea. Sojiro watched as Aoko shrugged her shoulders before looking over to the drawing room clock. No matter how heavy the mood, time kept on ticking.
明日から大変になるね。
Oh yeah, it was gloomy here too today. I guess I lied when I said I didn't wake up at all. I woke up once. There was one really big fucking thunderclap, like right above my house, which fucking shook the ceiling and fucking startled me awake. I was passed out on my back snoring, which is why it was so easy to wake up. I only snore when I'm lying on my back, but when I do, I get it from my father. I fucking snore like a train. So I was already in a light sense of sleep because I have woken myself up from my own snoring before. It fucking like just shot and went, huh? What? I heard the rain on my roof, and I'm like, it fucking took me like 10 seconds to, realize what was going on, and then I'm just like, and went back to bed. Muttered the undeniable victim of today's injustices. Aoko looked ready to move on from the incident, adding,
そうね。でも今は、そんなことより今日の夕飯のが楽しみなんだ。
Yep,
私。
can't change the past. Alice seemed to second the opinion with her silence. Comfortable and relaxed, neither of them seemed to have any intention of leaving the sofa to prepare food. Tonight was supposed to be his night off from work. At least, till midnight. But Sojiro knew the clock struck midnight, he would be serving on hand and foot the two ladies of the house. For one, it would take at least another hour to prepare something to eat. And there was no way the exhausted Aoko and Alice would stand for that, so the only other option, in the end, was to have something delivered.
なんと、トウコさんについていけばよかったかもしれないな。
Sojiro opened his wallet as he second-guessed his situation. His eyes settled on the third and final 10,000 yen bill in his wallet. It stared back at him forlornly, reluctant to leave its home. With a heavy heart, he bid it farewell. Oh, I was real close to the end of the chapter last time. Whoops. Howling with some scary eyes in the darkness. Got any bonus chapters this time? No? Excellent. Makes it easier for me. Chapter 10. Howling. This everyday tale started like any other. Oh, it does seem kind of choppy. I wonder why that is. I haven't restarted my PC in a while. So, there's a chance that's the issue there. And it just doesn't want to play nice. But we can deal with it. It's a VN. The morning sun alerted Sojiro that a day of work lay ahead. Specifically, the gardens need attending to. And an unkempt garden made for an unhappy Sojiro. Luckily, today was his day off from all his part-time jobs. It was the perfect opportunity to get his hands dirty. There was one problem, however. The mansion's grounds were vast. Not only had the courtyard been left to run wild, but the area around the front door had been neglected too. Yeah, there definitely is some stuttering going on. At least, I hope that's not my Switch's end. Ugh. Oh, let me look at my sound bars. No, the sound bars on OBS 2 are going a little, not entirely smooth, so it's definitely on my hardware's end. To attend to these problems thoroughly, you would have to work on them week in, week out.
よし、まずは地ならしだな。
In an ideal world, I ran out smoothing for a second, his task would only take a day, but for its enormity. For the moment, Sojiro decided to set foot into the mansion's wilderness and evict the weeds. Wasting none of the early light, he started tackling the ones around the mansion. By his estimate, he could clear the forecourt, the courtyard, the backyard, then take a small rest. You got some entertainment for breakfast today.
彼。さあ、草摘みが趣味ってわけじゃなさそうだけど。
It was just before noon in the sunroom. Alice had come down, book in hand, to find Aoko sitting down with a fashion magazine and elegantly sipping tea. Through the window, she could see the crouched figure of Sojiro shuffling by.
朝からやってるみたいよ。起きてカーテンを開けたら、もう
this poor
あの
bag.
格好でスパスパやってたから。いいけど、頑張るのね彼。外はあんなにも寒いのに。
Yeah, it's better to do it in the cold, because at least then, like, when you get hot and sweaty, you don't just, like, roast and die. Alice quietly sat down. Her teacup had been placed on the table for her. She poured herself some tea and proceeded to open her book. The two sat, passing the time in silence. Having happened to have the same idea, a nice, relaxing cup of tea in the sunroom. With their evening roles decided, there was no need for idle chatter. Aoko stared out the window, intermittently turning her gaze to the magazine. Alice was immersed in a book on rune magic, not magecraft, occasionally tilting her head up as if to recall something. As if by unspoken agreement, in unison, they pressed their teacups to their lips and glanced outside. To the two girls, Sojiro appeared as if he were an animal in a zoo. Neither was interested in lending a hand. Despite his sluggish movement, he was making good progress. As Aoko's attention turned back to the sunroom, her eyes met Alice's. Alice returned her gaze to her book. Though, moments later, she raised her head again. Damn, fucking man's on a mission. Though it is best to work at like one spot at a time and like radiate out from there instead of hopping around. Clearing her throat, she attempted to focus on reading. It was no surprise that Alice admired Sojiro's diligence. Not even 30 minutes had passed before he had cleaned the courtyard of unsightly weeds. Without stopping once, the mysterious gardener left the courtyard, puffing clouds of white breath. The area he left behind was spotless.
プロかしらね、あいつ。
Alice muttered after scanning over his work. A stalwart, Sojiro worked confidently and ceaselessly. She was impressed, like she was watching a scene from a great movie, but before long she grew irked. Why would he waste his energy like that, she thought. Alice looked at the clock.
焼却炉。今から手入れをしたら夕方ね。そっちはもう終わってるわ。朝、上から見てたもの。 壊されちゃいけないからあれこれ指示出してね。いやー、窓開けて散々怒鳴ったから部屋が冷えること冷えること。
It was safe to assume Aoko had come to the sunroom to escape from her cold room. Between barking orders from a window and cleaning in the cold, it was clear who had the harder job.
しずきくん、何か言ってこなかった？言ってたけど、よく聞こえなかったわ。
Yeah, just smile and nod. In other words, his complaints fell on deaf ears. With nothing else to discuss, the two resumed their reading. The ever so tense silence was broken by Sojiro entering the house after finishing his cleaning. He stared at the two of them, displeased.
あったかそうだね、青崎。
外よりは幾分ね。
That man's fucking learned to have a little bit of
外とあ
snark.
まり変わらないけど。それで、どうして庭の掃除なんて始めたのよ、宗十郎。
Sojiro's subtle jibe had failed to find its target. Is that like a jab? He had a chance of winning, and so he hung his shoulders in defeat. He had no chance of winning.
今日は本当に寒い。明日あたり雪でも降ってくるだろうから、外の掃除は早くに済ませたかったのに。焼却炉は予定外だったぞ。
He sounded resentful, but his problem was not with the additional work. If anything, he was glad to do it. What he did not care for was how nobody had even bothered to lend a hand.
いいじゃない。
He had just sat there and watched all
みんな使うん
morning.
だから。じゃ、その首相な心がけついでに2階の廊下に掃除機かけといてね。それと裏庭のブナのスレージ壊れかけてたでしょ。工具箱はあんたの部屋に置きっぱなしだからそれを使うこと。で、全部終わったら私の部屋に来てくれる？いらないものまとめておくから焼却炉で焼いておいて。
Hence, why she made him clean the incinerator. Cruel, but clever.
それで青崎、君は何をするんだ？
Not move from this spot.
そうね。やることもないし、ギターにでも触ってようかしら。
Aoko thought hard about how to spend her afternoon. Yet, the thought of cleaning did not cross her mind, as had always been the case. No, it was not out of spite that she did not think to help clean. It was because the word cleaning was not in her vocabulary. Sojiro knew exactly why the mansion was in the state it was in. Still, that did not change the fact that the corridor upstairs was very long. And Aoko was not lying about how cold it was. Inside was not much different than outside.
そうか。あくまで掃除をする気はないんだな、青崎。まあ、掃除はしたいからするけど、こう、なんだろう。一緒に住んでる人間をそこまでこき使って、
Not at
両
all.
親は痛まないか。それとも、割と気づいてはいたけど、両親そのものがないのか。
As usual, he might have gone too far. His remarks had hit too close to home. Aoko closed her magazine and turned to face him. Infuriated, she glared, her sharp blue eyes piercing into him. Sojiro knew he had not said anything unjust, but he always backed down first.
宗十郎。
Oh, God damn it. Let me explain it one more time. He replied automatically, straightening his back in response to Aoko's cold, calm tone.
勘違いはしないで。私たちはあんたを同居させてあげてるんじゃない。
Yeah, the residents in this house aren't on equal footing.
これ以上ないって譲歩の末、仕方なく飼ってあげてるだけなんだからね。
There's the siren. Aoko did not mince her words. Sojiro nodded in defeat.
そうか。飼ってもらってるのか。
そう。
Hence the
番犬
collar.
にもならないだろうけど。
Aoko responded, already tired of the conversation. We're just gonna power through it and not pay attention to it. While Sojiro had little room to counter, he still tried.
しかし一方、番犬は間違っても自分の食いぶちを入れたり、天津さえ家賃を払ったりしないのも事実であった。
なんか言った？
いや、負け犬の遠吠えを少しばかり。
He raised his hand dismissively, knowing he could not win. Tako's ears, his attempt at self-deprecation, sounded facetious.
宗十郎、あんた本当に分かってる？
そうだな。君たちがどうあっても掃除をする気がないぐらいはなんとか。
Toko grinned at her pet's obedience. As long as he knew his place, that was all that mattered to her. She seemed to be extremely satisfied with his response.
余裕あるんだ、しずきくんってば。
Her playful smile darkened, as did Sojiro's expression.
青崎、なんだか息ができないんだけど。
このまま放っておくと、そんなことも言ってられなくなるんだけど、試してみる？
He shook his head, his expression growing more and more grim.
懸命ね。私も窒息したいなんて見たくないもん。
Yeah, you'd lose your fucking free help. Hell, it's even better than free. He's paying to do it. The grating sound subsided. Sojiro gingerly touched his throat. The collar that had suddenly tightened around his neck returned to its normal size.
気管が塞がれた時の苦しさを知らないんだろう、青崎は。本当に抵抗できなくなるんだぞ、あれは。
だからそのための首輪だって言ったでしょ？今まで実践したことなかったし、あんたは相変わらず危機感ないし、心で一度しつけておいたの。それより掃除、急がないと日が暮れるんじゃないの？
What a slave driver.
結局、今日はこうなる星の運びだったんだ。
Sojiro left the sunroom, his shoulders slumped and his tail between his legs. Toko watched him leave before turning to her magazine as if nothing had happened. Alice paid no attention. None of that had anything to do with her. With Sojiro gone, the room once again fell silent. As the clock ticked on, Alice suddenly stopped flipping through her book.
ねえ、どうして彼を酷使するの？
She asked as though talking to herself. Toko replied without so much as looking up.
別に。最後には記憶を消させてもらうんだから、楽しかったら困るじゃない。
Obscure as ever, but sincere in her own way.
そう。言われてみればそうだったわ。
Mm-hmm. No need to make it any harder for yourself either. Alice could not believe she had forgotten about the situation. Silently, she looked up from her book and gazed outside once again. The courtyard through the window reminded her of where she had lived a decade ago. Nothing could compare to the beauty of those gardens. But if that was the case, why did the scenery make her feel nostalgic? All Sojiro had done was taken care of the gardens with the goodness of his own heart. In only half a day, he had achieved so much. It was Christmas Eve, and snow had started to fall. Must be nice. Still don't have any snow on the ground. Midway through January, fucking nothing. I'm gonna, blow my brains out in Minecraft if, we don't get any snow this year. I'll just die inside. A piece of my soul will be gone forever. If timing was too good, its timing was too good, as though it had been waiting for that day specifically. The cold, bustling main street seemed bright and vibrant under the layers of frosty white. Reindeer statues illuminated the surroundings. Children danced merrily to jingle bells. People walked along the brick road, smiling broadly. These festivities, however, had not reached the mansion on the hill. Silence enveloped the isolated building. The shadow of the snow-covered woodland grew longer, beckoning in the darkness. People returned to the warmth of their homes, knowing a bitter night lay ahead. I was about to say, like, what's the clock moving backwards? But no, rewind. Rewind. Something had been amiss in the mansion all day. Perhaps it was the calm before the storm. 2 days had passed since Toko Ozaki had revealed herself. Alko and Alice spent more and more time locked in the rooms. Mealtimes had grown noticeably quieter. Look at me just fucking throwing in new words. With the roles decided, they were too busy with their own jobs to worry about each other. On this day, the two had been relaxing in the drawing room since morning. The mood was calm. Well, mostly at least. Sojiro was fretting that tonight would be the same. He aimed his words towards the girls on the sofa, despite knowing they would be ignored. Whether the snow fell today, tomorrow, or not at all did not affect them. The snow just meant a white Christmas. Ako remained silent. She wasn't ignoring him per se, she just had other things on her mind. Sojiro knew this, but still cast a lonely glance around the sunroom. The courtyard he had cleaned only a few days ago was hidden behind a layer of white. The falling snow would stop every so often, but then resume again as if teasing Sojiro. By the next morning, the courtyard would be a winter wonderland. Alko and Alice sipped tea in an effort to fight the cold. In fact, that was all they were doing.
そういえば、トウコさんの髪の色は青崎より濃かったね。あんな綺麗な赤毛は初めて見た。
Sojiro rambled on, not expecting a response. However,
短かったって姉貴の髪が？
Ako's expression went from nonchalant to its usual sharpness.
それどういうこと？短くしてるって髪の毛のことよね。
Yeah, it was cropped in a pretty good amount.
ああ、アリスより短かったけど、それがどうしたんだ？
別に、あの人前は私より長かったってだけ。
Yeah, but that's a lot of work.
そう、あの髪を切ったのね、姉貴。
Alko spoke in a grave tone. Showing slight interest, Alice turned to Sojiro.
普通じゃないな。髪を切ったぐらいでどうしたんだ一体。トウコさんの髪が短いと青崎が困るのか？
まあその通りだけど。いいわ。どうせ夜まで暇だし、説明ぐらいはしてあげる。
Sure, give us another fucking magic lesson or whatever.
あんたがそんなこと言わなければ、未知数のままトウコと戦う羽目になっただろうし。
Alko knowingly glanced at Alice, her expression suggesting she was treating her. She was also likely seeking approval. Alice remained stoic as ever, her expression showing neither approval nor disapproval.
簡単に言うと、魔術師にとっては髪の毛も武器ってことよ。昔から人間の髪や目は魔術の材料になりやすいの。瞳の色は多いほどいいし、髪も長いほど質がいい。髪の毛は自身と同一視しやすいし、長い年月をかけて育てられる原始的で強力な原料と思ってくれていいわ。私が髪を伸ばしてるのはまあそういうこと。手入れが大変なんだけど、そこは女だから半分趣味みたいなもんよね。
You sure? You just seem to wear it down a lot. Sojiro glanced, furtively? Okay. Is that how it's pronounced? I don't know. Furtively at Alice, wondering if the same held true for her. Maybe Alice had cut it because it was a hassle to maintain. It sounded stupid, but then again, this was Alice. Sojiro nodded to himself.
じゃあ青崎としてはいいことじゃないか。トウコさんの髪短いんだから。
それがここに来る前に使い切ったものならいいんだけど、 伸ばした髪にはいろいろと使い道があるのよ。私は瞬間的な術の強化にしか使えないけど、姉貴だったら高級的な術の補佐に使うはず。年月と想念を蓄えた髪は魔術師の分身とも言える。そういったものをね、死んじゃった犬だの猫だのを反言させるときに与えると、術者に服従する使い魔が出来上がるの。生前魔力のなかった使い魔、例えば猫とか犬ね。これらは術者の髪を取り込んで独自の魔術回路を得る。申請することで全く違う生き物、猫の魔術師になるってこと。例えば人語を介したり人間に化けてみたりって。
Yeah, they can invade your dreams and do sussy things.
行動原理も変わってしまって、大抵は術者に似通った性格になるわ。そうよね、アリス。
Her last words came with a mocking smile. Alice silently ignored it.
じゃあトウコさんにはアリスのみたいな使い魔がいると。
そう見るのが妥当でしょうね。姉貴は20年以上伸ばし続けた髪と引き換えに強力な使い魔を用意したってことよ。
Or just one really good one. The fight at the amusement park. Just the thought of Alice Kuonji releasing flat snarks sent a shiver down Sojiro's spine. The oil of the moon had been a unique familiar out of this world.
ほら、そこ心配しない。三崎町をぶっ壊す規模の使い魔なんてありっこないから。確かに長く歴史のある紙を使用するほど強力な使い魔が出来上がる。けど紙を使った魔術師はそれまで溜め込んできた山中のうちの一つを初めからやり直さないといけない。切った紙はまた伸ばさないといけないでしょ。使い魔を作るのは簡単だけど、そう多く従えないのはそういうことなの。
As Oko spoke, her mood visibly improved, as though she had made a breakthrough.
犬とか猫か。
Tilting his head to the side. He could not imagine a world where dogs and cats were so powerful.
変ね。トウコさんは人魚師よ。使い魔を作って自分のレベルを下げるのはどうなのかしら。
協力者がいないだけでしょ。青崎のお家騒動に人の手を借りたくないから自分だけで全部やるつもりなのよ。あ、もしかして遊園地の人形って姉貴の紙で作られたんじゃないだろうな。
確かに話に聞いた限りだと特注品ね。呪いによる永久期間、両手のギミック、フィンの一撃、執念深さ。トウコさんでもゼロから作るのは難しいでしょうけど。
けど何よアリス。
Got an accomplice? Or at least a
あの人
supplier?
は人形に自己を投影するような人じゃないわ。完璧な偽物なら許すけど、偽物に過ぎない偽物は容赦なく壊してきた。青子から見てその特注人形はトウコさんと同じ力量を持っていた。
I don't know, can Toko fucking turn into a spider and crawl along the walls and have extendo arms?
まさか遠く及ばないわよ、あんなの。
ならトウコさんの髪とあの人形は別件よ。あの人が自分の魔力を分け与えたほどの使い魔があと一体はいると見るべきね。
専門家としての意見。つまりその使い魔は姉貴より強い。
Maybe.
そうでないと意味がないわ。人手が足りないというのもあるでしょうけど。だって私たちは2人、彼女は1人だもの。
同時制圧も想定済みってわけ。なるほどね。その場合どっちが強い方を引き当てても恨みっこなしよ、アリス。こと使いまであんたが遅れを取るとは思えないけど。
Yeah, we haven't really seen much of her other ones. Alice had never been defeated by a familiar. She sighed at Aoko's overconfidence.
青子、たとえ20
Besides
年
her,
間の
her big,
蓄
big
えを付
golem
与した
one
とし
and
ても
the two pigs.
その器が小動物では限度があるわ。
And well, I don't think Robin would be much help in a fight.
あのトウコさんが切り札になる使い魔を用意したのなら、それは。
よしてよ。いくらなんでも姉貴はそこまで悪趣味じゃないわ。
Do a little bit of necromancy or something? Akko and Alice stared at each other. The conversation had returned to the drawing room, but the subject matter was not for the faint of heart.
そうね。けれど、人間を追い詰めるのに最も
The
効
most
果
dangerous
的な
game.
相手は、やっぱトウコさんが死者を亡者にしていなくても、それと同格の相手がいるぐらいは覚悟しておいて。
Gross.
はいはい、わかったわよ。確かに天才ってやつは空気読めないから。どんな生き物の死体を用意してきても驚かないわ。
Akko nodded reluctantly at Alice's directness. Needless to say, Sojiro was completely lost.
その、よくわからないけど、なんで青崎たちは死んでるってことに固執するんだ？生きてるものじゃダメなのか？
Well, most familiars are made from dead things to begin with, so.
それは使い魔じゃなくて協力者でしょ。使い魔は基本、術者なくしては生きられないものにしないと。それでいて優れた意志を持ち、術者の資格や盲点を補える知性もある。それが一流の使い魔の条件よ。正直な話、それだけ都合のいいやつは死から作り直すしかないってわけ。
Completely obedient and capable of compensating for their mage's weakness. Sojiro felt that a familiar was a little different than himself.
さて、
Was a little different than himself? What did that say? I was taking a sip of coffee, so I misread because I was kind of looking to the side, make sure I didn't just spill it down my shirt. Sojiro felt that a familiar was a little different than himself.
姉貴は
I mean,
昔からル
the
ー
only
ン使い
weaknesses you're competent for are cooking and cleaning.
問題の切り札もどうやら使い魔らしい。自動人形もさすがにこの前で使い切っただろうし。
Akko spoke directly to Alice, looking for confirmation. Alice nodded in agreement.
じゃあ予定通り今日で終わりにしよう。この1ヶ月好き放題やられた借りギッタンギッタンにしてあのバカ兄貴に返してやる。
Alko clenched teeth and balled her fists. It all seemed like nothing more than sibling rivalry. In fact, that's probably all it was. Looking at Alko, Sojiro let out a sigh of relief. With what happened with Toko and how they reacted to her visit, the atmosphere had been deathly tense. For now, though, Alko seemed much calmer. He took comfort in the thought that perhaps the sisters would just bury the hatchet. Even if Alko and Toko were not sisters, he probably would not want to see what would happen if they fought. The hands on the clock turned gently. Approaching Judgment Night, a merciless silence would soon come to mock Sojiro's complacency. As night appeared, two things vanished. The first was the whimsical snowfall. The second was the lights of the mansion on top of the hill. Alko and Alice were nowhere to be seen inside. Only Sojiro remained. It was the night of Christmas Eve. Though Alko and Alice had yet to find Toko, they knew everything would be concluded over the course of this day and the next. Christmas comes but once a year. It was a singular time for endings and new beginnings. In Japan, the modern holiday dated back only about 100 years, and celebrating Christ's birth only in name, with only its latter-day trappings. It was neither a pure homage nor corruption the festival that inspired it. Alright, I butchered that fucking paragraph. Moving on. They celebrate a weird fucking watered-down Christmas. Regardless, there was a significant increase in the land's mana during festivals. Such charged distortions were a boon to a mage's craft, be it creative or destructive. Toko Ozaki sought to destroy the local sigils, which gathered and properly cycled the magical energy of the land and its people. Sojiro was able to gather that much from Aoko and Alice's conversation. Toko had already claimed 3 sigils. Only 2 remained. Any further loss would signal Aoko and Alice's defeat. In order to protect the remaining ones, they had to split up. Aoko lacked power, so she would need to borrow a ploy from Alice and head to the Tokawa sigil, which boasted the greatest local energy supply. Alice would go fully equipped to the sigil in Yashirogi. Free from the constraints of civilized society, magecraft is most powerful at midnight. The young witch and the apprentice mage wished each other good luck before leaving the mansion. It was almost 10 at night. After the girls set out, the first 2 hours passed quickly. When Aoko was ready to head off, Sojiro walked with her to the foyer. Neither had spoken a word to each other. She had departed without showing any sign of fear. It was difficult to tell whether she did not want him to get involved, or whether she did not see him as a worthy ally in combat. Both. The thought stuck with him. He let out a long sigh. Not out of dejection or frustration. It was a mechanical, emotionless breath. He sat on the near-frozen floor, staring vacantly up at the skylight. Moonlight peeked through the clouds. He imagined the moonlight bouncing off the town's powdery blanket and illuminating the night. But he would not find himself downtown. Watching from the sidelines was his role to begin with. His roommates and he lived worlds apart. He could not keep up with them, and if he did not show the same kind of will, he would remain on the sidelines. However,
そうか。この手が必要な時はもうないのか。
Sojiro looked up at the moon. I mean, they still need you to pay rent, so don't worry about that. You haven't gone completely forgotten. Somewhere deep inside, he felt a trickle of sadness. Veiled in white and cloaked in darkness, the park seemed like a forgotten memory. Not a soul was in sight. The night felt far more enigmatic than usual, yet the air was clear enough to drink. Was clean enough. Look at me just turning an N into an R like that. Though only a sliver of moonlight peered through the clouds, it lit up the entire world. I think the streetlight has something to do with that too, but... In those moments, a young girl's footsteps echoed, trampling the still white silence under a midnight sun. The pale moon illuminated the inky blue sky. Only a few streetlights and an incongruous phone booth betrayed signs of civilization. A girl appeared, dressed in black, moving at a choppy frame rate, because I need to restart my computer. Against the snowy landscape, the figure of Alice Kuonji was unmistakable. Pure black, deeper than even the night. Were her overcoat, gloves, and hat, even her... what? Okay, that was a period and comma after the night. The line break completely threw me off. Pure black, deeper than even the night, were her overcoat, gloves, and hat, even her hair and eyes. Nothing stirred for a time. Not Alice, not the white scenery. The world was still painting of a snowy field. Only time moved, gradually darkening the lights in the park, and eventually the nearby homes as well. Yashirogi was a more modern and developed town than Misaki. Though the park was located in the center of town, it had become a blind spot. It had been overlooked by developers and carried no commercial value. A few houses encircled the park, their street lights turned off at midnight. It was a white night. People, even machines, were fast asleep.
私が 先なのね。
Alice whispered, watching the street lights slowly fade. She thought she heard a dog howling in the distance. Perhaps it was howling at the moon. The howl reached deeper into the night than expected. A wolf, maybe? I'm pretty sure there are, like, no wolves in Japan. They've been extinct for a long time. The phone rang. It was perhaps the first time it had hung since Sojiro moved into the mansion. What? You mean, like, the ringing, like, stayed? Also, there's an extra period between Sojiro and moved, and not period, I meant space. Hesitantly, he picked up the receiver and brought it to his ear. He heard nothing. Felt he had something to say. He felt he had to say something, but he could not think what. Maybe something like, "Hello, Kuonji residents. Moshi moshi Kuonji desu." Or maybe, "You've reached the Aozaki residence?" While he was deep in thought, a voice as light as air came through the receiver. Sojiro could barely hear the voice, but it was definitely Alice's.
そうだけど、アリス?
No response. The silence was as profound as the night. But for the sound of static from the receiver. After a long pause, Alice finally spoke. Nope.
いや、まだ帰ってないけど。
What, you get your ass kicked and need someone to come pick you up? With a click, the call ended. Sojiro wondered if she had something to say, but could not respond in time. Slowly they advanced, carving through the fresh snow. There were so many. Where'd they all come from? Dozens of feral dogs snarled at Alice, their eyes trained on her. The snow clung to the beast's mangy fur. Their clenched fangs and bloodshot eyes hid a barely reined hunger that might burst forth like lightning at any moment. They yearned to taste her warm flesh and satiate their empty bellies. Same, bro. To them, the girl in black stood like a lighthouse in the stormy sea. She watched them, disinterested. It appeared that the Yashirogi sigil was the key target tonight, not Tokawa where Alice had gone. Alice had always been unflappable, and the child's play before her was hardly about to change that. Her main enemy was not the dogs surrounding her, but the lone mage behind them, Toko Ozaki.
ひどい趣味。ここ数年で品が落ちたの。まあ、それならそれで嬉しいけど。これが地金なら、青崎との付き合いもいよいよ白紙に戻せるわ。
Toko laughed at the Arabic? What? Oomst? How do I pronounce that? What does that mean? I don't even know what that word means. Man, they really fucking bust out the thesaurus for this translation, huh? Like, I know you gotta spice it up sometimes, but, like, come on, man. It's not just me that's dumb and doesn't know words, is it? I mean, it probably is, but...
Acerbic.
Acerbic. Especially with a comment or style of speaking, sharp and forthright.
いやいや、これは不可抗力でね。
Could have just used, like, bold or something, but whatever, man.
安心しろ、アリス。間違っても私の趣味じゃない。
Doesn't mean you're not enjoying it. Crunching through the fallen snow, Toko slowly came into view. She wore a moss green coat that contrasted sharply with Alice's garb. It's got a bit of a higher cut, too. A silk scarf wrapped around her neck, like in her armpit for some reason. She stood tall, her hair short, striking a more valiant posture than any young man. After all, the two standing here needed to be less than the shining moon. Needed to be less like the shining moon, and more like the darkness surrounding it. The barking abated. Like servants in a royal court, they averted their eyes from the ruler, lest their eyes and hearts be plucked out.
久しぶりだね、アリス。
トウコさんもお元気そうで。
They stood about 12 feet apart. No love had been lost between them. Just two enemies, one who was about to be victorious and one who was about to fall.
さて、どうしようか、アリス。
Rock, paper, scissors?
積もる話もある。君の近況にも興味がある。そもそも今回の件についていろいろと説明したくてたまらない。5分ほど時間を割いても構わないか？
お断りよ。あなたと5分も話をしていたら、その隙に内臓まで売却されそう。
The following events unfolded quickly. Boldly and without a second thought, Alice pulled out a cat bell from the seam in her mantle and dropped it. Diddle diddle. The beginning of Alice Kuonji's magecraft, the start to a night of fairy tales. Alco favored a quick draw approach like something from a western. However, Alice preferred sleight of hand. She used her target's blind spot against them, ending the game before they knew it had begun. The bell fell like a coin into a fountain. Then, as it was about to strike the ground, it shattered, disappearing without a trace.
ルーン。
ああ、一日かけて公園中に刻ませてもらった。この公園の道はレンガだからね。手間こそかかったが簡単な仕事だった。
Yeah, don't gotta worry about it getting washed away.
周りの森まで見て、ざっと400平米のキャンバスだ。面白いだろ？今私たちは30万字以上のルーンの上にいる。
Well, this is an unfortunate place to have this fight. Swallowing hard, Alice took a step back. Toko had carved runes all over the ground. Even in the area Diddle reacted to alone, there was a depressing amount of them. Had she truly carved them into the whole park? Probably not. Alice did not react with surprise. She simply narrowed her eyes. She could see how it would have taken a whole day. It's no wonder Diddle Diddle, Banquet of the Night, was destroyed by the Silk of Sun. Still, something bothered Alice. By the skin of... What? Was destroyed by the skin of the sun. Okay, I don't know why I said, like, silk. Brain, no work. Still, something bothered Alice.
一体どうやって隠していたの？
There was just too many. What kind of magecraft could do that?
ああ、ちょっと特別性。このルーンね、普段は確定していないんだ。こうしている今も変形している。パッと見はただの傷跡。それが強い魔力に触れると元の形に立ち
Oh,
戻る。
neat. It's like memory
形状記憶
alloys.
ルーンとでも言おうかな。そんなわけで、いかなる夜の
But
深
instead of
さをも
heat,
って
they
して
return to
も
their shape
この
in
太陽は
response to
没
magic.
しない。この通り、雪が降ってくれたおかげで視覚的なごまかしも万全だったしね。
She spoke modestly, but Alice could not imagine the amount of persistence, technique, and skill it must have taken. And it only took a day. Even 10 mages would have trouble producing so many sophisticated runes in that time. Moreover, these runes were made using unknown techniques the association had not approved.
負け惜しみだけど、私みたいな小娘一人に大人げないわね、トウコさん。
バカを言うな。君を小娘だなんて一度も思ったことはないよ。まあ、私好みの体だと 眠つけることはあったがね。
What do you mean? You talking about her magic circuits? Oh, her mystic eyes. Happened in the blink of an eye. Alice cut off Toko's snide remark with a deadly stare. The left eye of the darkly clad girl changed into a color of an ominous ruby. The spread of an incantation was phenomenal. The speed of the incantation. Alice's mystic eye of enthralling snared Toko. She had been the one to, quite literally, been taken captive by the girl's stare. Toko tried to raise her arm, but could not even move a finger. Alice's mystic eyes commanded absolute control, with no room for resistance. Only a person's internal organs were allowed the freedom to move. Since their organs still functioned, it was more precise to say that her eyes had forbade the target from acting. Alice had played her hand with exquisite timing. It wasn't the speed of her eyes that had given her an edge. The deftness with which she wove her spells to exploit the briefest vulnerability is what made Alice a different caliber than other mages like Aoko. This witch, who lived hidden in the modern era, was more seasoned in magical battles than Toko Ozaki.
だが残念。ディドルディドルが響かないのでは魔眼のアクロスティック化はできないようだな。欲しいね。あの月目のプロエキシャーならこれで私の方はお手上げだったろうが。
Ooh, yeah, about that. The formation holding Toko began to distort. In the blink of an eye, the mage had bested Alice's mystic eyes. Alice's black outfit fluttered in the wind. She turned so that she was not facing Toko head on. The mage had recovered through her own mystic eyes. At the root of Toko's mystic eyes was a spell of mesmerization. It was a spell of mesmerize? Mesmerize, okay. Most effective when facing their prey, such eyes could mind-jack a target's awareness. It was difficult to resist head-on. However, its effects were greatly diminished if the target was not facing the eyes directly, even if it was within range. Well, you know, eyes, window of the soul and all that. Moreover, the girl was the last witch of her lineage who commanded a great number of fairy tales. Against mystic eyes that projected their effects, simply turning one's body was enough to repel half of the magical energy. Like Alice's eyes, Toko could also disable actions. Alice had escaped by the skin of her teeth. The damage she suffered was the weight of a twig to a forest. She just had to let the energy pass through. In an instant, a startling chill ran through Alice's body. This was a problem. The touch of death ran up her spine. She glared at the mage before her, as blue rubber balls plowed out from beneath her undercoat. The stare-off grew more intense. Alice glared harder, resisting Toko's mystical eyes with her own. Losing was not an option. In terms of raw magical energy, Alice Kuonji's mystic eyes were more powerful and advanced than Toko's. Surely nobody could beat her. And yet, her unfiltered shock of magical energy, stifled by old-fashioned values, was no match for Toko's madness. Deeper within her eyes, somehow, the eyes revealed a sealed power. Inside the crystalline lenses of the mage's left iris was a bottomless pit, a Klein cube. Alice winced in pain. The bindings grew in number. So many mystic eyes, thousands perhaps, all fixed on Alice. Pressure. So much pressure. Endless. And Alice knew it. She saw, incredulously, she saw eyes growing within eyes. Was this Bloodborne? Toko had placed opposing mirrors inside her eyes, resulting in infinite glare. It was the act of a mad woman, creating mystic eyes within mystic eyes. She could even control the resulting chaos caused by all the copies. Her insanity knew no bounds. No mage in the right mind would mass-produce so many mystic eyes, the last escape of humankind, so indiscriminately.
やれやれ、これもお気に召さないか。
A smidge.
私なりにマインスターの真似事をしてみたつもりなんだが、うまくできているだろう。君の悪路のように希少な神秘で現実をねじ曲げるのではなく、量産した神秘で現実をねじ伏せる。もの自体はただの魔眼だが、その段数には果てがない。相手がどれほどの魔力抵抗を持っていようと、それ以上の魔力で拘束するだけのものだ。
Well, that's a bit of an issue. She wielded power without limit to disable an opponent. Once one was caught in them, one was chained to the concept of infinity. Projection-type eyes had a fatal flaw. Their firepower and formula were insignificant compared to the great artillery of incanted spells, but Toko had torn down that conventional wisdom with brute strength. If a gun was a pea shooter, she simply needed to bring more guns. A 9mm bullet could never destroy a fortress, unless one threw a fortress's mass of bullets at it. The principle was brutishly simple, but in the world of magecraft where concepts decided supremacy, Toko had created the perfect weapon. The target would be bound until she closed her eyes. In theory, at least, the effects were infinite. No amount of magical energy could ever overcome it, so it was utterly futile to resist using magical energy. Of course, one way to counter it would be to stay out of Toko's line of sight to begin with. The standard tactic against Mystic Eyes was to disable the user before they were aware of you. There was, however, another way. It was simpler than one might think.
ともあれ、これで罪だ。何か言い残すことは？
Toko could no longer see her enemy. I mean, Alice could no longer see her enemy. Toko's infinite eyes had bound her. All she could make out was a silver... What? Was a sliver of the moon. I'm dyslexic, leave me alone. And a blue streak, tracing its way down to her.
結構悔いのない人生で羨ましい。
She drew a rune in the air, unleashing a shockwave to tear flesh asunder. The gusts became blades of air that shredded Alice's overcoat and minced. Blue feathers glittered all around. Toko felt something behind her and turned. 5 cat-shaped bells were thrown at her feet. And just as quickly as they shattered to pieces, standing before her was a completely unharmed Alice Kuonji.
そよ風みたいなルーンね。トウコさん、本当に鈍った？
うつせみか。術者の身代わりになるプロイの話は聞いてなかったな。
ええ。1年のうち365日は役立たずで、どうしてあんなのが古参なのか、私も疑問だけど。
Yes, Robin does have some tricks up her
殺され
sleeve.
ることだけは得意なのよ、彼。
As if responding to Alice's words, a bird began chirping frantically. An anonymous sacrifice. Who killed Cock Robin? Echoed into the night, sung out of tune.
ああ、そ
こんな歌もあったな。
I don't know it. I'll be honest, I don't know like a lot of Mother Goose fairy tales.
だがあれは一度に一回しか殺されない。二度目はないし、あったとしても。
The bird squawked a very unbird-like death throw. From behind Alice, the blue robin fell from its tree, a victim of Toko's mystic eyes.
本当に使えない。
さて。ではやり直しだ。
Yep, take two.
あとも使えている。これで終わりにしよう、アリス。どの。
そうでもないわ。確かに今の私にあなたの魔眼は破れない。けれど Beauty up with wood and clay, wood and clay, wood and clay, Beauty up with wood and clay, my fair lady.
The song came from the depths of the earth, stirring a mighty quake to mark the birth of something gargantuan. Yeah, big golem. Toko needed to throw Alice into an infinite hell before whatever that was could be completed. But she was far too late.
Wood and clay will wash away, falling down, falling down. Beauty up with bricks and mortar, my fair lady.
The ground burst to life. A finger, then another, and another, all rising up like towers. Earth, snow, and brick knitted together, manifesting a giant stone golem.
そんなバカな話があるか。なぜこいつが出てきやがる。
Toko was so angry and confused she could barely gather her thoughts. The bridge giant. The monster from the Meister's fairy tales rose from the ground, ruining Toko's plans. Oh yeah, if it's made out of all the bricks, then oops, there goes your fucking plan. The giant was extremely powerful, but could only be summoned under one condition. It must be in proximity to a natural river. That was the monster's one and only condition. But this park was nowhere near one. And on top of that, it was rising up directly between Toko and Alice, mid-battle.
あら、あるでしょう。すぐそこに。川と呼ぶには小さな。すぐに消えてしまうものだけど。
What, melted snow? Got a trickle going? We playing the semantics game? Toko lowered her gaze. She was standing in a puddle of water. The scarred red mage was dumbfounded. That was why Alice had used Diddle Diddle before. Oh, to melt the snow? While the bells could be replenished, they were valuable to Alice. And she had spent 5, throwing them in an intentional line for the sun runes to destroy. From there,
気の気の流水か。
fucking JoJo-ass condition battle. Neat! The arms of the Thames troll rose from the stone paving. Or Thames. I guess it's Thames. The Thames troll rose from the stone paving. The monster's torso also surpassed 80 feet. Alone surpassed. Look at me, I can't read fucking today, Jesus Christ. Its form was made entirely of stone. Previously, she'd created one using the trees of a forest. However, Toko knew instantly the monster before her was at least twice as powerful.
止まれ。
She unleashed her stacked mystic eyes. They were meaningless at this stage. They had no effect on the giant. As said, mystic eyes can be countered in 2 ways. The first was to hide oneself from the view of the mage. That was the standard response. The other way, however, was devilishly simple, yet 100% effective. In fact, it's less of a way and more of a fact. Mystic eyes curse a target by focusing on them. However, what if that target was too large to focus on entirely? Oh, just get up real close. The answer was, one could barely stop a single arm. The giant, unfazed, raised its right arm and swung it down onto the ground, destroying thousands of runes. The demolished stones were then absorbed into its arm, adding to its mass. As the mage had said before, no matter how deep the night, these little suns won't set. While the suns might not set, they could be crushed under the bulk of a giant's hand. The victor of the battle was decided. Toko Ozaki closed her eyes and prepared to escape. The stray dogs began to whine, fearful of the hulking figure before them.
参ったな。私ではマインスターには勝てなかったか。
Yep, should have played more dirty.
まあ、そのあたりは今後の課題としよう。
呆れた。逃げられると思っているの？トウコさん。
まさか。そこまで鈍ってはいないよ、アリス。第一、逃げるとしたら、それは私の方じゃないからね。
There's no hint of bravado in Toko's tone. Even in the face of the Titan she had no means of harming, her confidence was unshakable. The reason being...
ま、前座は終わりだ。来い、ベオ。
This was no longer a battle of skill. A fight for survival had begun. Snap went Toko's fingers. In response, a beautiful, high-pitched melody floated up towards the moon. It echoed all around them. The spiral howl dredged up ancient, primal memories. Its source emerged from the shadows and landed next to the mage. Man, what the dog doing? Alice's lips trembled faintly, not from fear, but with admiration, once she recognized the creature before her. It was a majestic golden beast, beyond the domain of both magical and phantasmal, simply divine. It was a life that should have passed from the world with the Age of Gods. A mystic derived from human wisdom, preserved by thousands of generations of hidden tradition. A recreation of a miracle that once freely walked the earth, the natural enemy of magecraft, able to crush it with ease. Quiet resignation settled over Alice's face. The golden beast charged. This time, she didn't even have a chance to admit defeat. Huh. She could hear the beast breathing in her ears. It seemed she had been unconscious for a short time. Alice opened her eyes and took a deep breath. Each cough sent pain shooting through her body. Blood rose from the pit of her stomach, and she spat it onto the cold ground. When her vision returned, she was able to make out the distant sky, falling snow, and the golden wolf. The wolf panted. It stared at Alice, saliva dripping from its mouth onto her cheek. Razor-sharp fangs lined its jaws. Its fur was glossier than that of any animal she had ever seen. Brutal, knife-like claws protruded from its massive, blood-stained paws. And yet, it did not smell like a beast. Surely, the presence of such a noble creature, a human would feel like a lesser animal. Was it supposed to be like in the presence? Surely. The battle between Alice and the wolf was over before it had begun. After destroying the troll, it baptized Alice with its wicked claws, giving her no chance to escape. Its side swipe had torn into her abdomen like a sword, carving through her clothes and flesh all the way to her heart. Even so, not once did Alice make a sound. The wolf had her pinned and stared at her face. Her limbs felt ready to break at any moment. That was the situation she found herself in. Now fully conscious, Alice stared at her enemy through pained eyes. She felt no fear, only cold reality sinking in. Sensing Alice's demeanor, the wolf suddenly paused, a paw still raised. They looked into each other's eyes.
そんなに血が出てるのに痛くないんだ。
Oh yeah, probably hurts quite a bit. The wolf's voice came as a surprise. But there was no doubt it had been spoken.
それとも痛いのは平気なのかな。
The wolf's voice sounded innocent, almost childlike. In complete contrast to what had happened up to that point, the wolf smiled.
どっちにしろ我慢強いんだね、お姉ちゃんは。
The wolf opened its mouth wide and clamped its jaws around Alice's neck.
Beo!
Toko's tone was sharper than the wolf's fangs. The wolf froze.
トウコさん。
He let go and slowly turned his head towards the voice.
とどめは刺すなと言ったろ。余計な仕事を増やす気か、バカもん。
それはそれで楽しいのに。ああ、退屈。話に聞いた橋の巨人も結局は他の生き物と一緒だったし。
The wolf backed away from Alice, as if no longer interested in its prey. To the golden beast, she was little more than an old chew toy.
なんだ、もう意識が戻ったのか。心もタフなら体も大概だな。骨まで砕いてその程度の出血とは。
Barely clinging to life, Alice stared at Toko. But not a stare of hatred and defeat, but one of disbelief. Alice simply wondered why Toko had brought such a beast.
ああ、紹介が遅れたな。
Yeah, some explanations are in order.
彼
Excuse
は
me?
おそらく地上で現存している最後の人狼だ。北欧の奥地に生きる彼らの一族の中に現れた生粋の原種だよ。見ての通り、先祖返りなんて言葉じゃ表せない黄金の神秘でね。名前がなかったんで、わかりやすくベオウルフと呼んでいる。
I guess.
ベオウルフ。
Alice's face was perplexed, even though she hadn't wavered when she was disemboweled. Beowulf. The name of the heroic giant slayer from Danish legend. It came from Old English, a combination of honeybee and wild beast, a bear, in other words.
なんでそんなちぐはぐな名前を。
Yep. It's a wolf.
いや、可愛いからに決まってるだろ。
Perhaps because of the name, or because of the golden beast itself. Fighting the pain, Alice struggled to read Toko. In this respect, she was worse than Alko.
ついでに説明しておくと、周りの犬どもはベオが勝手に呼び寄せたものだ。私自身、マインスターの娘がただの畜生に傷つけられるとは思ってはいないよ。今のところは。
Toko's mouth twisted into a grin. Not the warm one Sojiro saw, but the merciless smile of a victor displays to a loser. The disdain in Alice's eyes turned to anger. The golden mystic. How could Toko have brought such a creature into the human world?
何？需要と供給だよ。過疎化は人間だけの問題じゃない。彼らもいい加減、昔ながらの生活には限界が来たらしくて、ね。と言っても、あくまで里から出すだけの権利だがね。お察しの通り、 私の髪はベオとの契約に使い切った。自分の髪を使って分身を作るより強大な怪物を縛り付けた方がよっぽど健全。
While she was talking, Toko noticed something strange. An unusual sound. A what sound? A preternatural sound that tore at the mind. What the fuck does that mean? Once again, Google will be my dictionary. Natural. Beyond what is normal or natural.
Preternatural.
A sound that should not exist. It was coming from the girl's open abdomen.
もう復元が始まったか。いや、というより。
何この匂い。トウコさん、なんかワクワクすること起きてない？
Is it regenerating or is it like going back? Curiously, Beowulf moved closer, like a puppy examining a new toy.
見るな、あっちに行っていろ、ベオ。正気を失っても知らんぞ。
Toko shooed the mud away with her hand. Beowulf lowered his head meekly and withdrew.
教育方針を間違ったかな。まったく、乙女の腹を見ようなんて恥を知れ、恥を。
Well, the soft underbelly's the fucking spot you go to.
トウコさんだって見てるじゃない。
バカ。私は乙女だからいいんだ。
If Alco had been here, she would have blasted them away with her for their impudence, just as she did against Flat Snark.
しかしむごいな。こんなになるまで放っておくとは。マインスターは人の親とは言えまいよ。
Huh? With her gloved hand, Toko ran her fingers along the wound on Alice's abdomen. A flash of pain ran through Alice's body. Alice had held in her screams, but she finally let out a long breath. She turned her face away, in pain or in shame.
ほら、もう肌も復元している。骨格、血管はおろか、内臓にまで施された。おびただしいまでの刻印だ。生後、肉体に魔術回路を付加することは諸刃の剣だ。呪文と自分を一体化させることにより栄唱の手間を省き、術者に多大な利点をもたらす魔術刻印。しかしそれは多ければ多いほど苦痛を伴う。青崎の刻印は
Oh god,
腕
her
一
entire
本。
fucking body's a magic crest. Ugh.
君に比べれば少ない方だな。
The magic crest Toko referred to were the inheritance of the Aozaki family, passed down by their ancestors. They could only be inherited. Alco had received the ones that were meant for Toko.
しかしそれも良し悪しだな。右腕に刻印をした青子の痛みは残る人間の体と神秘となった右腕とが反発する程度だ。通常の肉体が右腕を否定し末梢にかかる痛み、
Mm-hmm.
精神的にも肉体的にも生じる幻痛は現在にも似て拭い去ることはできない。
It's like a transplanted organ. You know, sometimes you gotta take medication because your body's like, ooh, I don't like whatever this is. Like this ain't supposed to be here.
ここまで来ると痛みも何もあるまい。そもそも生きている実感はあるのか？自分が人間だとまだ信じている？ああ、本当に。お互い非凡な死を持つと苦労するね、アリス。
Toko took Alice's body in her arms. The wounds from Beowulf had mostly healed. Even so, the breathing was shallow, likely due to the pain. Toko gently held the girl's face in her hand.
マインスターには恩がある。それに、私の相手はあくまで青子一人だ。
Well, um... Alice's lungs pined for oxygen. Toko pressed her lips to hers. The young girl wriggled, trying to escape, but Toko held her firmly. Beneath the blue moon, the two remained frozen. Then, the sound of swallowing. Something solid slid down Alice's throat. With that, she went limp and her arms fell. Is that really the only way you could think of? You couldn't do the thing like when you just plop it in the back of her throat and then kind of rub it like you do with dogs in order to get it to swallow a pill? You had to shove it down with your tongue? After setting Alice down on her side, Toko stood up. Oh good, put her in the recovery position so she doesn't choke on her tongue with her head thrown back.
今のは七かまどに手を加えた私の特製品だ。そう簡単に解毒はできない。魔力を流せば体の中で暴発する仕組みになっているから気をつけなさい。ああ、口移しは私の趣味だから特に気にすることはないよ。
They forgot a letter there. Oh, so you did it like that because you're a freaky bitch, I. As she desperately clung to consciousness, Alice looked up at Toko from the ground. The disgrace from the kiss was greater than the pain she felt in her body. Toko began walking away, her golden wolf in tow. Neither looked back to see Alice's hateful glare.
そうそう、一つ言い忘れていた。ベオが呼び寄せた野犬たちだけどね。公園の外にまだ山ほどいるんだが、困ったことに彼らは本来何を口にするべきかを思い出している。ベオの野生に刺激されたんだろう。獣はより強い獣に従うものだからな。
In a roundabout way, Toko had read Alice her last rites. In nature, it was common for the weak that could no longer move to offer their bodies up to feed the strong.
じゃあ、私は行くよ。歩くことも満足にできないだろうが、無事に帰れるといいね。
With a twisted grin, the mage headed into the darkness. As her footsteps faded, the sound of growls grew louder. Alice could still barely focus her eyes. The hounds looked like monsters out of a picture book. Alice took a deep breath, her consciousness slipping away. The sky was blue, the trees were tall, the park was a graveyard. In the corner of her eye, though, Alice could just about make out a solitary phone booth. The phone rang. It was the second time Sojiro had heard its voice echo through the cold foyer. Only a few minutes had passed since Alice called. He wondered what she could be doing what she could want this time. The call persisted, determined not to leave him to his thoughts.
はい、クオンジですが。
あら、その声は宗十郎くん?
A cheery voice? Sojiro had been expecting Alice. It was Toko Ozaki. Somehow, Sojiro was not surprised.
そうですけど、トウコさん、暇なんですか?
Oh, she's doing fine, but go get, your girl. He checked the time. He thought it was about midnight by now. No matter what the situation, Sojiro always kept his cool. He could hear Toko trying to suppress a laugh. Yeah, awful cordial of you, after last time in the current situation. After taking a while to compose herself, she started talking again.
ごめんなさい。ちょっとツボ入っちゃったみたい。で、質問の開始ね。これがあんまり暇じゃないな。私も今日で終わらせる予定だから忙しいんだ。
偶然ですね。青崎もそんなことを言ってました。
やっぱりそうね。こういう時は本当に姉妹だなって思うわ。
Really?
昔からエンジンかけるタイミングだ
Weird
け
thing to
は
have in
一緒だっ
common.
たから、あのことは。ところで、青崎はやめてって言ったでしょ。私も青崎だからくすぐったいのよね。そう言われるの。
Sojiro realized she was probably right. Azaki's words made more sense
ま
now.
あそんなわけだから長話をする気はないんだ。単刀直入に聞くけど。
Nope.
そ
It almost sounded like she was worried about her sister's whereabouts. But the cool-headed Sojiro had not forgotten Toko was their enemy. Keeping Aoko and Alice in mind, he decided to be evasive.
さあ、なんて答えてほしいんですか、トウコさんとしては。
The question shifted the tone of the conversation drastically. Sojiro could hear Toko muttering to herself in annoyance. Sojiro was proving more quick-witted than she had anticipated. A change of tack was required.
そうね。君には何も答えてほしくないっていうのが正解かな。第一印象で君を無視するのは良くない気がしてたけど、やっぱり私は宗十郎君を手にかけたくはないみたい。君はこのまま無関係でいてちょうだいね。
Her warning came from the heart. Sojiro responded flatly, once again not giving any sign either way. It seemed she wanted him to stay out of this too. Even Sojiro could tell the girls were being kind in their own way. But who asked for their kindness?
じゃあ、さよならね。私は君が思ってるほど暇じゃないから。でも、最後に一つだけ。君を試すようで悪いんだけど、伝えておかないと一生恨まれそうだし。なんで、そうならないように。
Okay.
責任の半分を君に押し付けちゃおうかな。
Toko giggled. A laugh to show that she had him in the palm of her hand from the beginning.
さっきクオンジさんに会ってきたの。彼女から電話があったでしょ。
Her tone had not changed. She sounded as cordial as before. Even so, as soon as Sojiro heard Alice's name, a chill ran up his spine.
彼女、今ひどい状態なんだ。満足に歩けないどころか、体中の刻印が活性化して破裂寸前。宗十郎君が骨折の痛みを知ってるなら、うまい例えようがあるんだけどね。
Yeah, probably don't feel too good.
まあ、ともかくだ。いつ気を失ってもおかしくない状態なんだけど、災難なことに怖い野犬に囲まれてるみたいなの。個人的な意見だけど、10分もあれば骨しか残らない結末になるでしょうね。
She spoke as if she was telling a joke. If it was a joke, it was in bad taste. However, Sojiro knew this was anything but. She was telling the truth. He had not heard of dogs attacking anyone in town, but the noise he heard while on the phone with Alice suddenly made sense. Dogs, a pack of them. No doubt about it, they were surrounding their prey. Why hadn't he not cottoned? What? What the fuck does that mean? Cottoned sooner? You mean caught on? You mean why had he not caught on sooner? Cottoned? That can't be. That's not an abbreviation or anything, is it? That's not like some dumb Americanism that I've never heard of. Cottoned? Begin to understand. No. It's real. Past tense of cottoned. What? Begin to understand. That can't be right. Is it caught on or cottoned? Begin to understand something. Primarily heard in the UK. Took me a few moments. Okay, it's a fucking... Dude, the British are something else. This is what colonialism does to your brain. Oh, I hit the enter key on my keyboard instead of my fucking Switch controller. Squeezing the receiver in his hand, Sojiro cursed himself. Alice had been calling for help. Even when backed into a corner, she had not wanted to involve Sojiro. Still, she needed help. The way she said his name so lightly.
場所は
He spoke abruptly. Even though he knew Toko was the enemy, he was confident she would answer him. That was the reason she called.
教えてあげてもいいけど、そうした瞬間に君は私の敵になるのよ。
Sojiro realized what was happening. He was being tested. By ignoring Alice, he would be confirming that he did not want to get involved. But if he decided to save her,
それで場所は
Sojiro ignored Toko's question. Of course, he was not prepared to become her enemy, but he was even less prepared to let Alice die. He had lost his ability to think sensibly, not that he was particularly good about that to begin with. Still, he would not waste any time in deliberation. He would simply go on with his instincts. It was one of the few times he had felt pride since coming down from the mountains.
そう。ちょっと残念だな。私は本当に君が気に入ってたのに。まあ、こうなることは分かってたけどね。場所はヤシロギの森林公園。受話器の下に地図があるでしょ。この前帰りがけにしおりを挟んでおいたから、それを参考にすること。繰り返すようだけど、10分持てば幸運。その後は1分ごとに奇跡の価値が上がるような状況よ。今。
As he listened, Sojo's expression turned to one of irritation. Misaki and Yashirogi were one station apart. How long would it take to get to the station from the mansion? Usually just under 12 minutes. By the time he got off the train at Yashirogi, nearly 30 minutes would have passed.
地図の上じゃ近いのに、区画整理された交通手段は不便よね。けど、急げば最終の電車には間に合うわ。ここで諦めた方が賢明だけど、君はもう私の敵だから。どっちにしたって、後悔のないように。
No more freebies. The line went dead. Sojiro, not Toko, had hung up the phone. He memorized the map and then made for the door. With no time to grab his coat, he ran out into the snowy winter night with the clothes he had on. All that remained in the hall was the discarded map. It showed Misaki City. It was about 10 miles from the mansion to the nature park. 5 if you went in a straight line, but the streets were not that forgiving. 4 inches on the map, but so much farther in reality. For the first time, Sojiro cursed the town. And with that dramatic cliffhanger, that is where we're going to end it here for today, because I need to upload this and record another video, and I don't have the time to just sit here for 3 hours recording the rest of the chapter. So, with that, hope to see you guys all next time for the next episode of Mihoyo. Catch you guys all then. Later. Bye.